and white's a-pawn is just going to run, and black is eventually going to have to sacrifice the bishop for that pawn. And when you analyze a position, you basically want to kind of go back throughout the game and look at the turning points and step back move by move and see if the evaluation changes at any point. So as soon as I win the a-pawn, it's pretty clear that white's winning. The evaluation doesn't change afterwards. Even though there's a lot of moves played, it's also clear that after white has won the b-pawn, it's also inevitable that at some point the c-pawn is going to advance, and then it will be possible for me to win the a-pawn. So it's also pretty clear from here that white's winning. But it will be good to look at this turning point and say, after rook d7, does black have any defense? It's interesting to check, say, what happens if he gives up the h-pawn, and say he goes king to f5. The drawback of this, of course, is that well, then white can take here, and say if then black tries to counterattack the rook and the pawn, then I have an extra move to play, and I can move the rook away with the tempo attacking the bishop, and then say after the bishop retreats, I should be able to advance the pawn here, and there's nothing black can do to prevent it from queening. So giving up the h-pawn is not really an option here. Instead, he could have tried to play king to f6. This has the advantage of having the bishop still guarding both the h and the b pawn. If I try to take on g4, then there's a fork, and I would in fact lose. So instead, white has a very useful idea of rook to g7, and it turns out that here there's also no. It's hard for black to defend, because I'm still threatening to gradually grab his pawns one by one. So say if he goes bishop here, well then the b pawn falls, and this is pretty similar to the game. We know that. So what happens if he goes king to e5? Then I can take here, and because the rook is staying on the g file, this pawn is in a fair bit of danger here, and it's really hard for black to defend. The king will eventually come to e3, and we'll see that the bishop will have to leave its ideal position on e4, and it will have to drop one of the pawns. So I still cannot take the bishop, because if I take, then the pawn will advance. So I just have to carefully prepare that. And now this interesting check, the idea of which is that if black takes, then the h-pawn advances. But the idea is to force the king off the square on e6. Now again, the h-pawn is going to fall after king f6. The rook can take, and it turns out that this pawn game is winning, because white has an extra pawn and his king is more active. It's going to run faster towards the black pawns. So it turns out that at this point there's really already no defense for black once the rook comes to d7. So this makes me realize that in this position, when black played pawn to g4, this was already an important mistake. So here I start to look for improvement, and indeed there is one. Black should have played something like king to f5, and from here, if I go rook to d7, then the king is on time to go to g6, and now he's attacking the h-pawn, which is very important. I basically have no time to chase any of his pawns. I have no time to transfer the rook to g7, and I probably have to attack his bishop and once the bishop moves, I kind of just have to keep the pawn guarded, and there's really no win here. Black's king is well placed, close enough to the pawns on the queen's on the king's side. So this explains what was the decisive mistake that Black made. Advancing the pawn to g4 was really unfortunate, because by doing that he let the rook invade, and he has no time to come back with the king and guard the h7 pawn. So this shows very quickly how to analyze a game and trace down the mistakes that you made and that your opponent made.